Welcome to Cars on Call. We have our trauma surgeon, Dr. Stephan Moran, is back. You were back
I'm
last week.
I was
Now
back
you're
last week.
back.
Yeah. I was gone the week before. 2 weeks ago, but I'm back this week.
3 weeks in Japan, and yeah, you lost the Japanese accent.
Arigato.
Ah, arigato. So,
Konnichiwa, yes.
you know this song, Domo Arigato, Mr. Roboto?
Oh, that's right.
I saw a an interview with one of the guys from Styx, and he said it was the best song in the 80s.
That
It
was
was the
such an
best
awful
song in the
band.
80s
Yeah.
about a robot that had Japanese in it. I'm like, okay, that's pretty funny.
But the song I remember from that year, I'm pulling it up right now, is the song by the Vapors. Remember that
Uh,
song? I'm turning Japanese. I'm turning Japanese. I really think so.
oh yeah,
Yeah, from the big 80s. That was a great hit.
it's a great song. We don't have to talk about what it's about.
All right, so what we
Anyway,
got?
listen, let's get rolling. We got a lot to
Let's get
talk
right. We
about.
got a lot to talk about. Yes.
I'm like really psyched to talk about something that I know you want to talk about. That is Mustangs. We're going to talk about Mustangs,
Yes.
specifically Shelby Mustangs. We have trauma surgeon safety. We're the only podcast that has a trauma surgeon that's done research on car crashes as well as operated on countless car crash victims. And we're going to talk about, you got a rant
I
about
do have a rant.
John Deere or something, John Deere adjacent. And
Exactly.
we got car spotting. I got a couple cars to talk about. So let's get into it. Shelby Mustangs. Stefan, bring us up to date with Shelby Mustangs in 2026.
So there's not been anything officially press released by Jim Farley on his podcast or anything, but there's multiple reports coming out of Detroit that there's going to be a big change at the Ford Motor Company. Basically, they're tired of paying $800 per car that has a Shelby name on it, and they don't think that it's taking the company where they want it to go. And we'll work through this. It's kind of interesting to me, and I can see it happening. I mean, I understand where they're going, but we're going to go through this. So the Ford, like a lot of like Superformance that makes Cobras and GT40s out of Africa, South Africa, Ford has a licensing agreement to use the name Shelby. And good old Carroll Shelby, awesome dude, man. Any way he could get a buck out of anybody to put it and put his name or anything, he was all about it. He was the ultimate, really, salesman. So Ford has said we're not gonna do this anymore. They haven't issued the sweeping public statement, but clearly this is what's going on. We've got the Shelby GT500, the Shelby GT350. Well, Ford has now the new Dark Horse Mustang, and then they have the Dark Horse SC, which is even above a Dark Horse, which is right up there with the GT500. And if you notice with Jim Farley wants to go back to Le Mans and he wants to win again at Le Mans. He
Well, they
races
have
himself
the Ford Mustang GTD.
GTD
Yeah.
racing and did it in Nürburgring. It crashed, unfortunately, very early in the race. So they want this identity of performance and branding to be Ford, not Shelby on a Ford vehicle. I get that. So they're really pushing hard and Jim Farley is all about Ford performance, and they want Ford performance branding rather than Shelby branding. Because think about it, the Shelbys don't go, they don't take the Shelby GT 500 350s racing. They're taking now the dark horses. So about $800 is what we think it is a car, and I get it. But I mean, I don't think this doesn't mean Shelby American is going to disappear. I think a Shelby GT 500 350 is going to be like a Roush Mustang now or a Celine Mustang. They get the Mustangs from Ford, and then they do their deal, and it's a Shelby. But it's not going to be officially at a Ford. They'll be at Ford dealerships, but it's not going to be a Ford product like it is right now. And but what's really interesting is that this whole Shelby American has completely diluted the Shelby name. Do you know what their number one selling Shelby vehicle is?
I have no, I would assume it's a Mustang.
It's a pickup truck with the Shelby it's a Shelby pickup truck. They sell
I
more than
guess
that in Mustangs.
I've seen one of those. I guess it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen one.
So so for Ford, this is dilution of the Ford identity, the Ford performance. And they were about this, 2005 is when the Shelby GT500 name came back under the Ford wing. We got Ford's got the GTD, the Dark Horse SC, and Ford Performance. They don't need this sub brand and paying Shelby and diluting the whole thing. And think about it, Ford knows branding, right? What did Ford do in 2008 to avoid taking a government loan? They
They hocked everything, even the Ford Oval. They
Yes, they put the
used it as
Ford Oval for
collateral,
collateral.
collateral
Ford
for a loan.
understands branding, and Jim Farley especially. And I get this. They are really getting back to their core and their branding and Ford performance. And I think it's a fabulous thing that they're doing. So that, Ford being back at the track, they want to have control of what goes on the vehicle. They don't want a Mustang with some Shelby stickers thrown on it like a Roush Stage One and this all these different stages. No, they want say this is our performance car. This is the way it's going to be. So it's interesting to me. And
By the way, I think that, I happen to agree with Ford. I think this is a good job. I think for all the reasons you said, Ford performance and the focus is on Ford, and there's no distraction of a
right,
Shelby sub brand.
yeah,
But another thing I think is very important, and you didn't mention this, but I think it's important. The Shelby name no longer has resonance. Shelby is a
correct.
60s name, really. The Shelby Cobras, the AC Cobras were in the 60s, and they don't
Yes,
have the same resonance. The name Shelby, if you ask young people, they've never heard of Shelby. If they have, they're like, "Oh yeah, I've seen the truck." So, just as muscle cars that I thought would stay so valuable for so long they're losing value. You just don't see muscle car prices in auctions that are so high like you used to. The really, really top ones, yeah, they're still expensive, but a standard GTO or something like that, they're like $20,000. And
yeah.
I never thought I would see that, but we are absolutely seeing it. And the people that resonate with Shelby and resonate with muscle cars, they're dying off. So that's another reason to not use the name.
I agree. I mean, yeah, people but think about it. People equate a Shelby with a truck and not the Mustang. Yeah, that's right. So I think it's a great thing. But here's something I want you to think about. Maybe Jim Farley's, he wants to beat the GT3 and has so bad. He wants
The
to show
Porsche
the
GT3.
Porsche GT3, yeah. And that has been a mission of his. So think about it. He admires Porsche. He likes what they've done. So think about it. If Farley's thinking about this from the bigger strategic question, is he trying to turn the Mustang inventory into something more like the Porsche's hierarchy, where you develop this affinity for the model? So the regular Mustang, that's a GT, Carrera S. Mustang GT, Carrera S. Dark Horse, that's like the Porsche GTS. The Dark Horse SC, that's kind of GT3-ish. And then the GTD is their GT3 RS track halo car. So and he wants to get rid of the dilution from the Shelby that kind of pollutes this hierarchy of the progression of the Mustang, which will now, I mean, think about Mustangs. Well, it's been around since 65, actually 64 and a half. So this is in my way that he's maintaining this desirability of the Mustang for the people that are not going to be buying him down the road. Shelby
Uh,
is more going to fall into the era of the 55 Chevy kind of thing. It's the old boomers like me and some of the younger boomers. But I think if Shelby would have stuck to Mustangs only, but all this other stuff that they do to make a buck just is diluting the Mustang.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, another car that was introduced in 1964 was the Porsche 911. So
There you
it's
go.
another parallel. I hadn't thought about that the parallel with the 911 as far as the GTS, the GT3, but now that you mention it, it makes perfect sense. And the GTD, very expensive Halo car, very limited numbers, just like the GT3 RS. And sadly, just like the GT3 RS, most of them won't be driven. It won't be driven at all, let alone at the track, which is kind of
Right.
sad. They'll be put in collections.
Yeah. So
All right.
I think it's they are abandoning one of the most powerful names in American performance, but I think it's the absolute right thing to do, and it further solidifies the core of what the Ford Mustang is.
Yeah, there you go. I saw the Outback, and in the 1990s, it would have been like 1995, so we're talking 35-ish years ago, or 30 years ago, I guess. Subaru was trying to get traction in the US market. They were big in the Northeast, they were big in Seattle, but they weren't big everywhere else. And they were trying to become mainstream. And they decided, let's just go with all-wheel drive and kind of make these kind of faux off-roaders. I ranted about this when I said authenticity in the off-road space is really going away because you have everyone's a fake. And the classic fake off-roader is the Subaru Outback. Well, Paul Hogan, Crocodile Dundee, made them famous. And, that one set of ads with Crocodile Dundee did more for Subaru than anybody else.
I forgot about that.
It totally put them on the map.
Yes.
And they've been on a roll ever since Paul Hogan did that for them. Well, I saw the new one and I'm like, all right, it looks like a Lego car. The fenders with the plastic cladding, it's
Oh,
completely straight over it's parallel to the road in a straight line. And it's just this is the first one that looks like a Lego. It looks stupid. It looks completely blocky and I thought very unattractive. It's an evolution, but it's an evolution in the wrong way. It doesn't have any smoothness or coolness to it. It's to me, it's too blocky, and I just couldn't stand it. I'm like, all right, now I really don't like it, especially again, if you see that it's like a rectangle in the
it's,
fender over the wheels. I just saw it. I'm like, oh, I hate it.
I hate all cladding that they put around fenders. I think it looks stupid. That looks really stupid.
Well,
I don't understand.
they took a Subaru Legacy station wagon, made it more blocky, lifted it by like 4 or 5
Oh,
inches, and then boom, they called it the Outback. And people, oh yeah, yeah,
so
the roof rails too. And all of a sudden, people were paying like $5,000 over a legacy station wagon for this. Well, they've continued that. Of course, they took the Impreza, which is it's a cheap little tinny car, raised that by 4 inches, put cladding on it and roof rails, and that's the Crosstrek. So I mean, they spend like $800 and they can charge an extra $5,000 to $10,000 for it.
so now I see I get it now. They didn't even bother to retool the fenders. They just jack it up and then put some pieces of plastic on the
That's it.
fenders to make up for the space.
That's it.
Oh, that's terrible.
Right.
That's
And
that's terrible.
and different wheels. And again, if you look at the black mirrors, the black roof rails, and the black cladding, it does start to make it look like an SUV, even though it's not. And again, a Crosstrek is exactly the same thing. It's very cynical, but people spend so much more on these than they would for the standard wagon. And uh, you're not going to take this on the Rubicon Trail. Give me a break.
Yeah.
All
Oh,
right. That's it. That's all I have
anyway,
to say about this. Let's go
all
to
right.
trauma, surgeon, safety. What do you got for us today?
We're gonna be brief because we got a lot of I've got a lot of talking to do. But so the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration is opening up an investigation into Uber's AvRide. So AvRide is Uber's autonomous vehicle. That's what they want, just have the taxis or Lyft service, whatever, without drivers. Well, in Dallas, this is where they initiated the program. They had 16 crashes pretty early on and quickly. And this isn't basic, but these are all minor crashes. There was some property damage and one minor injury. These were not big crashes. These are little city crashes. But they said that the vehicles, interestingly, behavior may indicate excessive assertiveness and insufficient capability. So it sounds like they kind of rolled it out early, and the profile that they have for the driving of these things is pretty aggressive. So they reviewed the videos, and what happens is basically these things would change lanes right into the path of others, too close or sideswipe them. But and then they hit some stationary objects. But here's what we always got to get back to when we think about autonomous driving vehicles. They're way better still than humans, okay? All 16 of these crashes had a trained safety operator in the vehicle.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, so come on. Even the trainer, so the human and the vehicle both screwed up. So
that's embarrassing.
isn't that embarrassing? So, one of these days, the autonomous driving vehicles are still better than humans, and if you add up all the numbers, but these had, and they're the same thing with the self-driving Teslas and the other cars, the Waymos. They had humans in them, but then the humans get distracted and things still crashes. So you can remove the human or leave them in there. It doesn't really change a whole lot, you know.
I read something that changed my mind about because you see there was a Waymo problem, a software problem where like 10 Waymos were going down this dead end street in Atlanta and turning around in the cul-de-sac and then coming back and then turning around and going. So they were going in a circle and it was like 10 of them and there were no occupants and they had to call Waymo and Waymo had to change the software. So they do these goofy things. And it reminds me of something because I think this is the essence of the difference between humans and smart autonomous computers. And someone wrote, it was not my idea, but I said, okay, that sounds right. A human will put their hand on a stove and know to never put their hand on any stove. For a computer, you have to show them every single stove that there is.
Right.
And if
Yeah.
they don't understand what a stove is, you just have to say this object, this object, this object. So they have to be trained on every single stove, where a human just knows, oh, that's a stove. It's a big difference.
Yeah, but I think AI will change that. So from going from straight code, now these eventually ADAS will have a form of AI where it can be adaptive and think that this I've never seen this stove, but it kind of looks like a stove. Yeah, I just compared it to 1,000 other pictures. It is a stove. Don't touch it. And AI can do that, boom, like that. And
But they will always be wrong. And another thing about
yes,
AI, and again, this is something I heard on a podcast I hadn't thought about. A human will always be able, a smart human, if you ask them a question, will think, and then at some point, doesn't matter what the question is, a human will say, I don't know. AI is trained to give you an answer. So because
uh,
AI will give you an answer, it's going to come up with these hallucinations. That's the reason you have, because AI is not able to say, I don't know. So therefore, they're going to say something wrong because they have to give you an answer. And I think it's the
ah,
same thing. The computer that's driving a car has to do something instead of saying, I don't know what to do. I'm just going to stop. And sometimes they
that's
do that, but there's going to be instances where that happens. And that's why these kind of goofy mistakes like going down a cul-de-sac. Because what should happen is they should go down a cul-de-sac, turn around, and then the software says turn around again. Something should say, this doesn't make any sense. That's what a human would. It doesn't make any sense to keep going down the same street 10 times.
right.
But the AI doesn't say, I don't know, or doesn't say this is stupid. They just do it, even if it's stupid. Just like an AI, when you ask a question, it has to give you an answer. Doesn't have the capacity to say, I don't really know.
Hmm.
Anyway, I want to hear your rant. This sounds. By the way, Uber very famously, Uber was the self-driving vehicle that killed a homeless woman who was walking her bike across the street, and there was a safety driver in that, and it just plowed right into this, didn't even brake.
Yeah. Yeah. Ugh. But fewer Ubers have done that than humans behind the wheel.
True.
True.
Oh, absolutely. And there's so many
Yeah.
stupid things that happen that just misapplication of pedals. I mean, that's not going to
Yeah.
happen. A 90-year-old will drive into this store at 50 miles an hour because they put the hit the wrong pedal, and that's not going to happen with. I
No.
agree. Self-driving is absolutely safer. It's where we're going to be. The goofy stuff is there's less goofy stuff now than there was 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
All right, let's hear your rant, man. I'm
All
psyched for
right.
this. I got
All
a
right.
hint, and I'm like, I think I'm
Okay.
all about it.
Well, I remember hearing about this and it really it pissed me off when I heard about it. But so what happened was John Deere decided that they were going to restrict all access to repair software. So that means you buy a John Deere combine, a John Deere tractor, it gets a low pressure warning, or it gets some kind of warning, or it says you have driven this combine 400 hours, it needs its oil changed. Well, the combines would just quit working until you change the oil at the John Deere place. So they restricted all access to their repair software and resetting VINI codes. Completely locked out independent mechanics. You couldn't even change the oil yourself on these things. Okay. Well, farmers got pissed. Think about it. You can't delay a harvest, all these kind of things. I mean, it's their livelihood. And then not only that, the John Deere dealers could charge inflated repair prices because there was no competition. They had a monopoly. We can imagine, in America, this doesn't sit well for two reasons. Number one is, we're the land of the free. Don't tell me what to do, what I can't do. If I'm going to change all myself, I'm going to change it. But don't lock me out of that. We don't like monopolies. Another thing is, but people didn't get that upset. What people got upset about was, hey, you're hurting our farmers. Politically, that's volatile. Okay. People respond very quickly to farmers getting a bad deal. I mean, we all got to eat. Okay. And you think about it, you bought a $700,000 machine and all of a sudden you can't control anything of it. You can't even change the oil to get back in the field to get your harvest done. No. So there was an antitrust lawsuit in 2025. Multiple class action suits got together. John Deere in 2026 proposed a $99 million settlement to allowing the software to be accessible for 10 years, though they denied any wrongdoing. Well, the deal is I'd never buy a fucking John Deere. If I knew that and I had to buy a combine, I hope the other guys aren't doing it. So you think about it. So here, okay, this was huge news. You would think this is going to be in business classes, teaching about how you mitigate this kind of thing. What's the right thing to do? What's the wrong thing to do? Well, guess who's doing it now?
Well,
Porsche.
auto manufacturers have been doing this for decades, and there's lawsuits that's called right to repair,
Right.
and right to repair laws have been written in probably every single state.
Well, I mean, you can take your vehicle and go get the oil changed and reset it. You can't do that on a Porsche. You cannot reset the oil life to zero if you change the oil yourself on a Porsche. So Porsche's getting pulled in the same argument. And there's a class action suit filed in Georgia. Diagnostics, calibration, coding, software resets, maintenance functions are 100% locked out on all Porsches, new Porsches. So this started with an independent shop, um, changed the oil on a Cayenne. The guy picked it up and he says, "Well, it says oil life is zero." The guy says, "Porsche won't let me do it." He got pissed off and he started the whole plaintiff claim against Porsche. Um, so what's very interesting to me is clearly, I know Porsches in Germany, German attitudes are different. Maybe they don't have independent service centers, but who is their largest market?
U.S.
The US. So,
I
but you
guess
got
it's not
real,
every state that has that law. I know lots of states do.
yeah,
Again, it's right to repair, and manufacturers are specifically not allowed to restrict the software in that kind of manner. So that's wherever that. I guess you said it was Georgia.
Georgia.
Uh,
Yep.
what a what a coincidence happens to be where Georgia, where a portion of North America is headquartered.
Yeah.
That's
And
probably
I
got
mean,
something to do with it.
so yeah, so it's interesting, now you can kind of take the other side of the story. Think about it. My F-150 truck. I mean, I've had some computer issues, but they got the update. It's working fine. Think about it. There is a shit ton of proprietary written code and software that they paid people big money to write. And it's kind of like an Apple computer. There's certain things you cannot get into on an Apple. So I understand how they want to protect their investment, their encryption. They don't want the vehicles getting hacked and stolen
Right.
remotely. So, I mean, I understand I understand this, but I think there's clearly got to be a middle ground, a gray zone. Like on the Ford, I can reset the maintenance anytime I want myself. That's not, I don't have to have it done with a computer. I just go to the buttons, oil life, hit, hold, reset. Because you know why? You know why Ford knows if my oil was changed or not?
Wow.
You go to the local oil express. They scan your VIN. That maintenance then goes into the database and it can be pulled. So there is data out there that you can say, yes,
Yeah.
no, I did change mine.
Carfax, for example,
Yes,
pulls data from independent shops and Jiffy
right.
Lube and things like that. That's true.
So, so me, I understand it's all complicated, all this ADAS, but I think this is Derek. I think this is dangerous for Porsche because what has Porsche brand reputation historically been dependent on? Long-term ownership. Enthusiasts. Enthusiasts like to do their own work. Independent specialist for the enthusiasts that want to track their car. Think about Adams Hudson. The dude is constantly taking apart his cars and cleaning them and putting them back together. He doesn't get into the motor and stuff. He does those oil changes. And think about the old air-cooled Porsche. They were independent shop driven all over the country. Now you're going to tell the Porsche guy, you really don't own your car. You own, you have it. No, no, no. We own all the software. We own the computer on your car. You can't touch any of that. I think I think they need to get on this pretty quick and they need to change this. I think that
Yeah,
they're going to lose in court.
the,
Precedent's been
ca-
set.
the counter argument is in addition to the proprietary software, which is a great point, in addition, the counter argument is we do not want Chinese made parts, substandard parts, things that are going to break because we have a reputational
Right.
we have a reputational value here, and our reputation will be harmed with substandard parts done in a substandard manner with substandard mechanics. And we want to protect that because if you put the wrong part in and the engine blows up, then all of a sudden you've got a real, a damage to it. If it's a really nice 911 and it blows up, or God forbid, a Carrera GT, and it's not their fault. I mean, just look at, for example, Paul Walker's death. He died in
Right.
a Carrera GT, and people would think, and some people who don't know, think, oh yeah, he died in a Porsche. The Porsches are, they're dangerous cars, where it was old tires and very careless driving. So I get that point too, but oh my goodness, a farmer that's been taking his John Deere to probably a local guy who he knows well, a friend who he knows
Or they
does the
come.
work.
You can't throw a comp. They're going to come locally to
They
do it.
come
Yeah.
correct. Yeah. And that guy who he calls, he knows him, he's going to be there in 20 minutes. Maybe the Deere dealer is 4 hours away. So there's real consequences to this kind of monopolistic behavior.
Yes. And they're gonna write a check for this. Precedence has been established in court with the John Deere case, and it's a way it should needs it. And I'm totally with you. There has to be this. They can't be open book on everything in their software, but there
Yeah.
has to be a middle ground of what is generally approved and not approved or have access to. You know.
Yeah. I think,
Interesting.
maybe have maybe not a licensing, not a franchising, but some kind of approval process where an independent shop will connect with Porsche in some way and become approved.
Right.
And the same thing with John Deere. And I don't think, I don't think it's that hard to do. And you don't have to approve everybody. So these fly-by-night operations that use Chinese parts, you can say, no, we're not going to approve that. But all the guys that are doing work for farmers and they've been doing work on John Deere's for 20 years, of course they should be approved.
Yeah. So.
All right, well, I'm going to move on. I saw an interesting car. This is a car spotting, and this is the Honda Element. And the Honda Element, I should look up what years. I'm gonna go to Claude and search this, what years it was sold for. The Honda Element is a really, really interesting car. It's no longer available. Element years sold, and it's a really great car. you know, this is a car. The reason I'm shocked, it was sold from 2003 to 2011, and it was they stopped selling it for apparently slow sales. But if you look at it, it looks purposeful. As the magazine Car, the English magazine would say, it looks like the box it came in. And if it has a
Yeah.
tailgate, and you can the rear seats are on tracks, so you can remove them very easily. It's got a kind of floor you can hose out. It's not a carpet, it's like a composite floor. But again, you can remove those seats if you want easily. You can push them all the way forward if you want. And you can just put, a couple mountain bike. You could probably put a dirt bike in there, not a 500, but maybe a 125cc dirt bike. You can put a lot back there. And God for, of course, you can have a bunch of dogs if you like. This is a configurable rear, configurable cargo space. And this is all-wheel drive, so you can take it, down a sandy road or a dirt road. Again, not the Rubicon Trail, but you can take it a lot of places. And mostly for an active lifestyle, this is a wonderful vehicle. The reason that I'm really surprised they didn't keep it going, despite slow sales, is this is a cheap car for them to make. This is a Honda CR-V, and they sell a million of those with a different box on it, a different body. You make it in the same factory as a CR-V. This is very cheap for them to make. The incremental cost is very low compared to a CR-V. And so there's so much cost that's amortized. This is not an expensive vehicle for them to conceive of and to produce. And I wish they still had it because, if they marketed maybe a little bit more, have, increased awareness, something like that. I saw this. And by the way, they stopped making this in 2011. That car looks contemporary. That looks like it could be 2026.
Yeah. What it reminds me of is when I was in Japan, all these little Kai cars. And here's a picture from Japan. They had all their little boxy Kai cars that just maximize every inch of space. So whether you got to throw your family in there, grocery shopping, bicycles, whatever, it is a tremendous space utilizer. They get great gas mileage. So yeah, I agree with you that the Honda was. I mean, I remember when they came out, they were funky, and the people that bought them at the time were people that were like, "No, I'm not getting a Subaru, but I'll get one of these." It's kind of a funky people that were outdoorsy. If they could now, that didn't have all-wheel drive at the time, but I imagine if they came back at that with all-wheel drive or call it four-wheel drive, whatever, it would be, yeah, it's a perfect car, but it's almost a little bit Aztecish that, it's very functional, but you're not quite sure. And I'm talking about the Pontiac Aztec. You're not quite sure if you like the looks of it or want to be seen in it. So this is a candidate for invisible car, but it's because it's absolutely the perfect functioning car for everything you do. But it just needs a little bit of invisibility, maybe.
Yeah.
But it looks better today than
I,
it did then.
yes,
Yes,
that's my
that's the
thing.
key. Yes,
That's
absolutely. I totally agree.
Yeah, it was, it was miscast. It was ahead of its time, and
Yes, way ahead of its
um,
time.
and now I think if they were to bring it back, which I think they should do, it would do really, really great. Nissan's bringing back the Xterra, which they never should have deleted. They never should have gotten rid
Yes.
of it. The Forerunner is selling like crazy. You've got, the Subaru Outback, which we talked about earlier, looks kind of goofy, but guess what? They're selling. The Subaru Outback sells really well. The Crosstrek is a huge hit. This it looked weird back then. I don't think it would look weird now. And if you just
No, I
update
don't.
it, it would look contemporary and kind of cool.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a great point. I mean, I love it. Now it's amazing. I remember when they were out, it's like, but I'm like you, I like it way more today. Maybe because we understand and appreciate how functional it is. It's not a poser. It doesn't, it's not, they didn't throw plastic stuff all over it, making it look like it's an off-roader when it isn't. It was just like the Japanese Kai car. It was designed for one thing, to be maximize the utilized space, get good gas mileage. It was safe, and you could do so much with it.
Two vehicles which are reflective of our times today are unapologetically off-roaders, and they look the part. They look blocky and boxy and off-roady. And these two vehicles they're probably the two hottest vehicles on the market today. One is the Land Cruiser by Toyota. It's not really a Land Cruiser, it's the old Prado, or it's a 4Runner with a different body. And then the offshoot of that is the Lexus GX. The Lexus GX is probably the hottest car to buy right now. You can't get any
Wow.
discounts on it. You're going to wait. They're sold before they get to the dealership. And the Element is kind of, it looks like them. And that kind of look, where boxy, blocky, off-roady, it's just what people are interested in. And it's maybe it's a little bit of a repudiation of the teardropped aerodynamic EVs.
Oh yeah, there you go. It's anti-Lexus RX. It's
Yeah,
everything RX.
anti-Lexus RX, anti Mercedes
Mercedes T, yeah.
EQS and EQ whatever. Um, I wish they'd bring it back. Just like obviously the Xterra, I guess, is coming back. They should bring that back. By the way, do I think it's going to be body on frame? No, I think the Xterra is going to be unibody.
Unibody, absolutely.
It'll be like an Outback. It'll look off-roady. It'll be called the Xterra, but it's going to be, an offshoot of their Pathfinder SUV, which is unibody and not really a Pathfinder. All right. Well, we covered a lot of ground, and that's all I have. I think we're done.
All right, yeah, that was a good one.
That was fun.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for listening in. And remember, hit subscribe, hit the bell, and that way you'll get notified when we have a new podcast. And yeah, we're trying to do every 2 weeks. We've been pretty consistent with that. So we're going to keep that up. So once again, thanks everybody for listening. Or watching if you're on YouTube.
Thanks, guys.